I think it's working. Okay. So today we're looking at two different methods in addition to what we did yesterday. Yesterday we did the plurality method and the board account method. Today we are looking at plurality with elimination and pairwise comparison. Now, yesterday, just to make sure that we remember, how did we do plurality again? Just counted for the top row, right? So we were looking at the total of the first choice votes, and that's the only thing we were looking at with plurality. So plurality with elimination is the same kind of thing, except in this case we are eliminating the last place person. Okay? And also this is one of those types of votes that you have in which that maybe when we say majority rules, that means you have to have at least 50% of the vote. Quite often when you have several people running, you will not have 50% of the vote. An example of that is in today's news. We have the Viking Stadium that's being voted on today by the owners of all the football teams. They said that majority rules, but not only majority rules, but it has to be a 3/4 majority. So 75% of all of them have to vote for that. So who knows? Maybe they're using this method to figure that out. Or maybe they're taking a vote, eliminating, and re-voting. I don't know. So let's read through this together. Plurality with elimination is based on survival of the fittest. If a candidate receives a majority of the votes, that candidate is fittest and wins the election. If no candidate receives a majority of votes, the candidate with the least number of first place votes is eliminated, and the second election is held with that candidate on the ballot, without that candidate on the ballot. Now, that's only if you're not using a preference ballot. What we've got here is that we are using a preference ballot. So, then we will, then each candidate below the eliminated candidate moves up one position. So if the say R is eliminated, then S will go up one, T will go up one. Okay? All right. So this process is repeated until we have our majority. Note, multiple elections are not necessary when using preference ballots. We remove the eliminated candidate from the preference table and assume that the relative preference of the voter of a voter are not affected by the elimination of the candidate. Okay? So, what I have here is something out of our book on page 777. I'm going to move it up a little bit. And we're going to look at what happens when we use voting by plurality with elimination. Okay. So, first of all, we need to look at who won overall the first time around. So, if we look at there's 4 candidates, and we're just going to call them P, R, S, and T. Let's look at P, first of all. On the first round, P has 14 votes. S has how many votes? 10 plus 1, right? So that makes it 11. T, because he's right here. Okay? So T has 8 votes, and R has 4 votes. Okay? Clearly P wins this round. But we need at least a 50% majority, and it states that in the problem in the book. Okay? So we need to find out what our total is, and we need to do that by totaling up the number of votes that we have on the top row. That ends up being 37, I believe. Okay? So we're going to take the number that P has. He has 14 out of 37. It has to be 50% in order for us to stop. 14 divided by 37 ends up being 38%. Okay? So because we don't have majority vote here, we got to do some elimination. Yes, we're going to get rid of R. So I'm going to go through my table and mark off R and make a new table. Okay? Now, one of the things you could do is just mark off R and write the new letter in front on top of it, okay? So in order to save space, I happen to have the tables already written. So you may not have to do this on your own, but so like here's R, I'm going to mark him off right here. Okay? So on my table below now, I'm moving everybody up one that's at R below. So now R is gone, so it's going to be S and T here. But like I said, Morgan, one of the things you could do is instead of marking him off, you can go S, T now, P. See what I'm saying? Yeah. Move them all up like that. Okay.
That would be very confusing with that would be very confusing because I would put the T next to the R, or the S next to the R, then...
It's up to you how you want to do it. You could do it either way.
It's not that confusing as long as you have...
All right, now, so we're going to check with plurality again who wins based on that elimination round. So P, let's look at him. He got 14 votes still in the first row. Okay? S has 10 plus 1, so S still has 11 votes. And then T now has 8 plus 4. So T has 12 votes. The top vote here still is P. He's got 14, but he's still at 38%. That didn't change anything. So we got to do this again. So who are we eliminating this time? S. So S is getting eliminated. And we can rewrite our table again, moving everybody up. So now I have P, T, T, P, T, P, T, P, and then T, P again. Okay? Now let's check to see what our vote numbers are. Now, P still stays at 14. But now T has 10 plus 8 plus 4 plus 1. Okay? So that would be 23, I think. Did I count that right? 18 plus 4 is 22, plus 1 is 23. So 23. Now, is 23 over 37, is that more than 50%? Yeah, it is. It is actually exactly, well, not exactly, but 62% around. Okay? So we can stop. Who won this election? T did. Which is kind of surprising. Because all the way up until now, P has been in the lead. Okay? So if we were to do this based simply on plurality, P would have won. But because we did it by elimination, T got the lead.
Okay. I can understand. I just have to write that.
So now I want to talk about pairwise comparison method. In this one, we're going to take each of the candidates and compare them to each of the other candidates. All right? So voters rank all the candidates, and the results are summarized just like what we had before. This is the exact same table. The table is used to make a series of comparisons in which each candidate is compared to each of the other candidates. For each pair of candidates, X and Y, use the table to determine how many voters prefer X to Y and vice versa. If a majority prefer X to Y, then X receives 1 point. If the majority prefer Y to X, then Y receives a point. And if they tie, they each get a half a point. Now make sure you know that, because on your homework for today, there are some ties that you're going to have to deal with. Okay? So if they tie, you give them each, you give both X a half point and Y a half point. All right. So the first thing I want to know is, how many pairs do I have to make to compare them? So there is a nice little formula here that we're going to use. Okay? So we will use this one right here. Say we have 4 people that are up for election, that are on the ballot. I'm going to put that in for N to find out how many comparisons I'm going to make. And there are some homework questions like this as well. So 4 times 4 minus 1 times divided by 2, yep, is 12 divided by 2, and that's 6. So I need to make 6 comparisons. If perhaps when you're setting up your comparisons and you don't have that total, you're missing somebody. You need to go back and check to find out which one you're missing. Okay? So, I need to have 6 comparisons. So let's set up our comparisons down here. We got P, R, S, and T. So I know I need to look at P versus R. I need to look at P versus S, P versus T. I also need to look at R versus S, R versus T, and then the last one I need to look at is S versus T. Okay, so do I have 6 comparisons listed? Yeah, so I didn't leave anybody out. The next thing I also want to do is just on the top, I'm going to leave like a tally, a scoreboard, so to speak. Okay, so I'm going to have P, R, S, and T. So let's first look at P versus R. On the first column, who wins? Who has the higher score? The P does. So I'm going to give him a little tally of 1 right below him here. Okay. On the second column, who wins? R wins, right? And third column, R. How about fourth? P is last place. R again. And then fifth column, same thing. So who wins this particular round? R. So I'm going to give him a point up here. So I'm only looking at like who gets first and second place. So P got chosen over R on this one. So he got a tally. But on all the rest of them, R was chosen over P. Okay? Now let's look at P versus S. So on the first column, P wins. But notice S is above P on all the rest of the columns. Okay, so who wins overall? S does. So S will get a point. Now P versus T. First column, P wins. But obviously, since P is last place in all the other columns, T wins all the other ones. So T gets a point. P's not doing so hot. Okay, now let's look at R versus S. On the first column, who wins? R wins. How about second column? S wins, right? How about third column? S. Fourth column? R. We're tied. This is our tiebreaker. S wins on the last column. So who wins overall in that one? S. So we'll give him another tally up here. All right. Now let's do R versus T. R wins first column. Second column. T wins the third column. R wins the fourth column. And then last column, T wins. So R wins that one. Okay, now we're looking at the very last one, S versus T. So first column, who wins? S. Second column, S. Third column, T. Fourth column, T. Last column, S. So who wins overall? S. S won the election. All right? All right, so there's a lot more scuttling around with that, but there you are. Okay, so now notice that S won this way, T won this way, and then plurality, Paul won, P won, and then after, if you were actually do the board account, Rita won, R. So, in this particular example they use in the book, 4 different counting methods, 4 different winners. Okay, so that tells you how there's some. It's important to pick whatever counting method you're going to use and stick with it for one thing, but also how they're all kind of flawed. Okay? Is the second part of assignment 14.1, and now notice it says 14 through 26 on my sheet. Your sheet says 16 through 26, so keep it 16. It should be 16. Okay? So, and then the rest of it's correct.